Let me read to you a passage from the 5th chapter of St. Matthew's Gospel, verses 13 to 16. It's the Gospel for the 5th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year A. St. Matthew writes, Jesus said, "You are the salt of the earth. But if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything, except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven." That's from Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 to 16, for the 5th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year A. What does it suggest to us? Well, it speaks of us as being salt and light. You know, I have heard it argued that a principal feature of the Anglo-Saxon trial system is that it is adversarial, as opposed to the European court system. Well, whatever be the truth of this comparison, all in the English-speaking world are aware of the adversarial character of courts of justice. Prosecution and defence do not work together to find the truth. Rather, they are adversaries. What matters is the win. The culture is such that if a criminal walks out of court having won, then he can ignore the responsibilities he has flouted by his crimes. Perhaps there were no real witnesses, or the witnesses were not convincing, or the law on convictions was too demanding to gain a conviction, or the defence counsel was far superior to the prosecution, or the one breaking the law was just too smart. Now, trial, judgment and conviction in the life of society prompt thoughts in us of each person's responsibilities. Man enters the world with the power to choose, and with this power comes the responsibility to choose what is good and to avoid what is evil. This fact of responsibility is fundamental in the life of society and every man. After reaching the age of reason, man thenceforth has before him certain responsibilities. He is required to fulfill them under pain of sanctions. He senses this in his conscience, and to a point society too makes him aware of it. But what society enforces does not exhaust the matter, for each of us has responsibilities towards God. Each member of Christ's faithful, which is to say, every baptized member of the Church, has responsibilities that can be fulfilled or ignored. Our Lord told many parables about those who ignore their responsibilities and the divine judgment they face. There is no doubt that our Lord, precisely as prophet, spoke more about God's judgment after death than any prophet before him. In the final analysis, as far as each of us is concerned, there will be two beings that matter, God and myself. That meeting between God and me will involve a judgment, and no one will be able to come between me and my judge. No defence counsel will be able to outwit judge and jury. Judgment will be brief, manifest, ultimate, and with no further recourse. This judgment will turn on how we have fulfilled our God-given responsibilities in life. There is one responsibility to which our Lord often refers. Each person baptized into Christ has the responsibility of bearing witness to him in family, workplace, friends, parish, wherever. It is this to which our Lord refers in the Gospel I read earlier, Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 to 16. We who are baptized are to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. Salt of the earth. In those days, salt not only gave flavour to food and made it pleasing, but it preserved it from corruption. Right up to the invention of advanced refrigeration, whenever a long sea voyage was being undertaken, the meat would have to be salted for its period at sea. This was critical for sea travel and naval warfare. Salt preserved the meat for a time, otherwise the carcass would quickly corrupt. The Christian who gives his life to Christ and to the pursuit of holiness makes the world pleasing to God and preserves it from corruption and spiritual death. But if the salt loses its saltiness, it is useless and has to be thrown out to be trampled underfoot by men. The Christian loses his saltiness by neglecting to cultivate his union with Jesus Christ. Our Lord says that we are the light of the world. The Christian is this because he possesses from his baptism the true light, which is Christ. His light must shine in the sight of men, but all too often it is barely a flicker. Indeed, in too many cases, it has gone out. Even if it is shining still, it should be shining far more. It will not shine brightly if we have not made Christ the great light of our lives, if he is neglected and disregarded. We must be the true salt of the earth and the light that enlightens those around us in the world. This is to say that we must be assiduous in our daily spiritual life, having a plan of spiritual living which is very well advised, well thought out, and faithfully adhered to. We ought to begin each day prayerfully, offering the day to God, and perhaps with the gospel in our hands. We should do a little spiritual reading each day. We should have a regimen of prayer, a daily examination of conscience. We should devoutly receive the sacraments. We ought to sanctify our daily work. We're all called to personal holiness. We are born into the world with responsibilities, and our first and greatest responsibility is to love God with all our heart, mind, soul and strength. This is what it means to be the salt of the earth and the light of the world. We cannot be this if we're not making a persevering effort to seek union with Jesus Christ through daily personal prayer, a holy reception of the sacraments, especially the sacrament of the Eucharist and penance, and by living according to his commandments. At the end, we shall be judged, but not in a human court, which can be evaded by adversarial methods. We shall be judged by God, and his judgment is final and everlasting. It is assuredly coming. Let us never imagine that we can evade it.